Have you ever noticed how prices rise quietly, but never seem to come back down? Not dramatically, not all at once, just enough that one day you pause in a store and think, wait, wasn't this cheaper before? A loaf of bread, a bag of rice, your favorite snack, transport fare, rent. Nothing explodes overnight. Nothing feels like an emergency at first. But month after month, year after year, your money feels smaller. And the strangest part? Even when things get better, even when inflation supposedly slows, the prices don't return to what they used to be. They just stay there, higher. This is something almost everyone experiences, but almost no one truly understands. Because inflation isn't just an economic concept, it's a psychological experience. It shows up in the grocery aisle, at the fuel station, when your salary hits your account, and somehow feels lighter than it did last year. You remember a time when a single bill could cover a full shopping basket. Now it barely fills half. And naturally, you ask the question that seems obvious. If prices can go up, why can't they come back down? At first glance, the answer feels simple. Companies are greedy. Governments are corrupt. The system is broken. And while those explanations sound satisfying, they only scratch the surface. Because the real reason prices don't fall has less to do with villains, and more to do with how humans, businesses, and entire economies behave once prices rise. Let's start with something familiar. Imagine your favorite fast food restaurant. For years, a meal costs $5. Then one year, prices go up to $7. You complain. Everyone does. Social media fills with outrage. People threaten to stop buying. But hey, race, what actually happens? Most people don't stop. They adjust. They sigh. They complain. And then they pay. Because hunger doesn't disappear. Habits don't vanish overnight. Convenience still matters. Months pass. The new price becomes normal. And then something interesting happens. Even if the restaurant's costs later go down, even if ingredients become cheaper, even if supply chains recover, the price stays at $7. Why? Because lowering prices feels like moving backward. And in economics, backward movement is dangerous. Once a price goes up, it resets expectations. Consumers slowly accept it as the new normal. Businesses restructure around it. Wages, contracts, rents, and budgets all add just to that higher number. Dropping prices would mean admitting that the higher price wasn't necessary. And no business wants to say that out loud. But this isn't just about companies. It's about you too. Think about your own life. If your rent goes up this year, and your landlord later tells you, don't worry, inflation is easing, do you expect your rent to go back down? Probably not. You expect it to stay high, or go even higher next year. That expectation alone changes how the entire system behaves. Because inflation isn't just prices rising. It's expectations locking in. Once people believe prices will keep rising, they act differently. Businesses raise prices preemptively. Workers demand higher wages. Landlords increase rent, just in case. Governments print more money to keep things moving. And every one of those actions quietly reinforces the cycle. This is why inflation feels so unfair. Prices go up fast, but they come down slowly, if at all. And when they do fall, it's usually not called relief. It's called something much scarier. On the surface, falling prices sound like good news. Cheaper food, lower rent, affordable fuel. It feels like relief. But inside government offices, central banks, and boardrooms, falling prices trigger something very different. They trigger fear. Because when prices fall across an entire economy, it's not called things getting better. It's called deflation. And deflation is one of the most dangerous words in economics. Hey, race, why? Imagine you're planning to buy a new phone. It costs $800 today, but you hear a rumor that prices might drop next month. What do? You wait. Now multiply that behavior by millions of people. When consumers expect prices to fall, spending slows. Businesses sell less. Revenues shrink. And once revenues shrink, companies react quickly. They cut costs. They freeze hiring. They delay expansion. They lay people off. Now those laid-off workers spend less too. And suddenly, falling prices aren't a gift. They're a signal that the economy is slowing down. This is the deflation trap. When prices fall, people stop spending. When people stop spending, businesses suffer. When businesses suffer, jobs disappear. And when jobs disappear, prices fall even more. It's a downward spiral. This is why governments would rather tolerate slow, painful inflation than risk deflation. Inflation hurts slowly. Deflation breaks things fast. History has proven this again and again. During the Great Depression, prices collapsed. Goods were cheap, but no one had money. Factories shut down. Unemployment exploded. Cheap prices didn't help people who had no income. So today's policymakers learned a hard lesson. Never let prices fall across the board. That belief alone shapes everything. Central banks don't aim for zero inflation. They aim for some inflation. Not too high, not too low, just enough to keep money moving. This means that when inflation slows, officials don't celebrate falling prices. They celebrate prices rising more slowly. And that's a huge difference. If inflation drops from 10% to 3%, prices are still rising, just not as fast. But to the average person, that feels like nothing changed. Because it didn't. Your groceries didn't get cheaper. Your rent didn't go down. Your transport costs didn't fall. They just stopped climbing as quickly. And hey, race, another uncomfortable truth. Once businesses raise prices, they often use that moment to reset profit margins. At first, they raise prices because costs go up. Fuel becomes expensive. Ingredients cost more. Shipping gets disrupted. But later, when those costs stabilize, something happens. Businesses realize customers didn't completely disappear. They complained, but they stayed. So prices remain high, not because they must, but because they can. Lowering prices would mean earning less revenue, confusing investors, admitting previous prices weren't necessary. And investors hate uncertainty. A company that lowers prices looks unstable. A company that maintains higher prices looks strong. So instead of cutting prices, businesses do something smarter. They keep prices high and quietly reduce value. Smaller package sizes, thinner products, lower quality materials, fewer features. This is why inflation doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like shrinkflation. You pay the same or more for less. And because this happens slowly, it avoids outrage. No headline screams, "You're being charged more for less today." You only notice after a while. When the bag feels lighter. When the bottle empties faster. When your money stretches less than it used to. By then, it's already normalized. And normalization is the enemy of reversal. Once higher prices become normal, reversing them becomes politically dangerous. If prices fall, businesses panic. If businesses panic, jobs are threatened. If jobs are threatened, governments step in. So instead of allowing prices to fall, governments focus on one thing: keeping the system stable, even if it feels unfair. Hey, race, the part no one says out loud. Prices don't come back down, because the system was never built for that. Inflation isn't a mistake. It's a feature, a quiet one. When prices rise, your money doesn't vanish. It forgets. A dollar stops meaning what it used to mean. And once that meaning is gone, it never fully returns. That's why waiting for prices to go back to normal always feels disappointing. Because normal has already moved. Each price increase resets reality. Businesses adjust. Governments adjust. Budgets adjust. And without noticing, you adjust too. You stop buying certain things. You downgrade. You delay. You compromise. At first, you tell yourself it's temporary. But then months pass. Then years. And those compromises become habits. That's how inflation locks itself in. Even when inflation slows. Even when headlines say, things are improving. Your life doesn't feel cheaper. Because improving doesn't mean prices are falling. It means they're rising more slowly. And that difference matters more than most people realize. Your groceries didn't get cheaper. Your rent didn't drop. Your transport didn't cost less. They just stopped getting worse as fast. Meanwhile, your purchasing power never fully recovers. If your income doesn't rise faster than inflation, you're falling behind, quietly. That's why inflation feels personal. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive all at once. It shows up in small moments. When your savings buy less, when your plans shrink, when later becomes never, and by the time you fully notice it, it's already normal. Reversing inflation would require something no one wants. Lower prices, lower profits, higher unemployment, less government revenue, pain. So instead of reversing it, the system does something else. It asks people to adapt, work more, spend smarter, accept less, and slowly, expectations drop. Not officially, not publicly, but internally. You stop asking, why is this so expensive? And start saying, that's just how it is now. That shift is everything. Because once expectations fall, prices don't need to come down. The system already won. And this is why inflation hits some people harder than others. Those with assets, property, businesses, investments often keep up. Their wealth rises with prices. But those living paycheck to paycheck feel the squeeze immediately. Prices rise first. Income follows later, if it follows at all. And because prices don't fall, the gap widens year after year. No collapse, no explosion, just pressure. So when someone tells you, don't worry, prices will come back down, understand this. They usually don't. They settle high. And settling high still means losing ground. The real question isn't whether prices will fall. It's whether you can keep up in a world where money slowly loses meaning. Because once you see inflation clearly, you start seeing it everywhere. If this explained a frustration you felt but never had words for, you're not alone. This channel exists to expose the hidden forces shaping your money and your future clearly and honestly. If you want to see the system more clearly, subscribe. And in the comments, tell us, what price increase changed your habits the most? Because once you start noticing inflation, you can't unsee it.